In 2026, the Strait of Hormuz became a geopolitical choke point, and global oil markets panicked. Crude shot up to nearly $120 a barrel in a matter of weeks, freezing supply chains around the world. The fallout was immediate and human. For citizens in developing nations like Pakistan, this fuel spike triggered crippling inflation and widespread unrest on the streets. Typically, we are told there is a global safety net for this exact situation. The conventional assumption is that international institutions, specifically the International Energy Agency, coordinate massive emergency stockpiles known as strategic petroleum reserves to protect the global economy. This map shows the demographic reality of that safety net. The nations protected by the IEA represent just 16% of the global population. The vast majority of the world, particularly across the global south, is essentially left entirely exposed to these price shocks. Hoarding millions of barrels of crude oil requires massive infrastructure, deep financial buffers, and constant maintenance. For developing nations, storing that much oil is an unaffordable luxury. The current model of global energy security is an illusion for most of the world. When a supply shock hits, exposed countries often scramble to execute a strategy called reactive balancing. We saw this clearly when India aggressively sourced discounted crude oil from alternative suppliers like Russia to offset the market chaos. Being able to choose a different seller does not grant a nation actual control over its energy supply. A buyer is still entirely at the mercy of global market rules, military conflicts in shipping lanes, and unpredictable international sanction regimes. This chart compares national reserve capacities, showing how thin the margin of error is. While China and the US hold over 1 billion barrels in reserve, India only has an 8-week supply. Pakistan operates on a razor-thin margin of 5 to 7 days. As long as an economy requires massive amounts of imported hydrocarbons to function, diversifying suppliers is just substituting one geopolitical trap for another. And that vulnerability extends far beyond gas tanks and power grids. Our heavy reliance on imported oil is literally buried in the soil that grows our food. Modern agriculture relies almost entirely on synthetic chemical fertilizers to maintain crop yields. The primary feedstocks used to manufacture those fertilizers are fossil fuels. This creates a direct economic chain reaction. When conflict chokes off oil supplies and crude prices jump, the cost to manufacture fertilizer surges proportionally. That cost is then passed directly into extreme food inflation. True global security is impossible if we only focus on decoupling our power grids and vehicles. We have to systematically decouple our food production from the international oil market. Achieving that systemic decoupling requires changing how we farm at a structural level, moving away from heavy synthetic inputs and towards self-sustaining soil systems. Massive corporate and agricultural partnerships are already building this decoupled system. Through initiatives like ADM's Global Regenerations Program, technical experts work on the ground with local farmers to implement these methods directly in their fields. This diagram illustrates the mechanical shift in farming. Instead of importing synthetic, fossil fuel-heavy inputs to force crop growth, regenerative farmers minimize soil disturbance and maximize biodiversity. They use cover crops to let the land heal itself and naturally recycle its own nutrients. By maintaining living roots in the soil year-round, farmers drastically improve what agronomists call nitrogen use efficiency. These active root systems naturally capture and fix nitrogen in the ground, stripping away the need for expensive, manufactured fertilizers. In 2024, ADM's program alone enrolled 5 million regenerative acres globally and partnered with 28,000 farmers, backed by major consumer grants demanding supply chains that aren't tied to oil markets. By removing the strict reliance on synthetic inputs, regenerative farming transforms agriculture. It stops being an economic liability tied to global oil shocks and becomes a highly localized engine for national resilience. While stockpiling crude oil offers a temporary buffer, building millions of acres of self-sustaining topsoil creates a permanent hedge against food price volatility, a critical pillar of national stability. When supply chains freeze, the costs do not fall equally. Energy insecurity attacks the working class first, squeezing wages through expensive transit and driving up the cost of basic food at the grocery store. The 2026 crisis laid out a clear choice. We can either continue playing a reactive game, constantly trying to navigate geopolitical choke points and military conflicts, or we can commit to overhauling how we power and feed the world. Genuine sovereignty relies on eliminating oil demand so entirely that the next global shock passes unnoticed.